A single father charged into gunfire to save an officer. His and his dog's bravery stunned the entire police department. Amid the chaos of gunshots echoing through downtown streets, terrified citizens desperately scrambled for cover. One man against all reason ran straight into the line of fire. On the blood-soaked concrete, a female officer lay broken, a crimson stain spreading across her protective vest. No one dared get near, but he did his loyal German shepherd at his side, racing forward to pull her to safety. The entire city saw it. The whole police department stood in absolute disbelief. A mechanic and a father had done what even trained officers were hesitant to do. Nathan Carter never imagined his Saturday would unfold this way. At 36, the former Marine had forged a quiet life for himself just outside of Boston, a world away from the violence that once defined his days. His powerful frame standing 6 feet tall, with muscle forged by years in the military, navigated his auto repair shop each day with a well-practiced efficiency. His sun-weathered skin and short brown hair framed eyes that held depths of experience. Gray-blue orbs that had seen far too much and lost far too much. A faint scar on his left shoulder served as a constant reminder of Fallujah, though that wasn't the wound that hurt the most. 3 years had passed since cancer had taken his beloved Sarah. 3 years since he gripped his wife's hand as she faded away in a sterile hospital room, her vibrant spirit finally succumbing to the disease that ate away at her from within. He'd swapped his dress blues for coveralls that very day, leaving behind a military career that now felt meaningless, without her to come home to. The only thing that mattered now was Astrid, their daughter, 8 years old, with her mother's honey blonde hair and the same striking blue eyes that could shift from joy to worry in an instant. Astrid was his whole world. Wise for her age, she devoured comic books and fantasy novels with the very same fierce enthusiasm, often reading to Rex, their 5-year-old German shepherd, as if he truly understood every single word. And perhaps he really did. The dog came into their lives soon after Sarah had passed, a puppy Nathan adopted from a shelter on impulse, hoping Astrid needed a friend to love who would never leave her side. Rex grew into 70 pounds of pure loyalty and protection. His black and tan fur shone with vitality, his keen eyes forever following Astrid's every move. Their Dorchester neighborhood had been changing in the last few years. What was once a working-class haven, where neighbors were like family, had become dangerously unpredictable. The Iron Vulture's biker gang had pushed into their territory, bringing illicit deals and violence to the very streets where kids once played. Trust in law enforcement had been eroded by several recent scandals involving corrupt officers. It left residents trapped between the criminals who owned the night and the police they couldn't trust. Officer Amanda Blake knew this mistrust better than anyone. At 32, she'd battled crime and corruption for 8 years with equal fire, earning medals for her many arrests and enemies, for her unwillingness to ever look away. Her angular features, framed by dark brown hair always secured in a tight regulation bun, held the resolute look of one who always chose the more difficult road. The small scar on her chin was from a dealer's knife 2 years back. He'd attempted to offer her a bribe first, then tried to end her life when she defied him. She cuffed him the blood from her own neck, still warm against her skin. This latest case had devoured 6 long months of painstaking work. The Iron Vultures had escalated far beyond street-level narcotics. Intelligence painted a grim picture. They were now in the business of arms, somehow getting their hands on official hardware that was supposed to be destroyed. A traitor within the department was funneling them intel and equipment. Amanda had bravely volunteered to go deep undercover. Her unblemished by-the-book reputation was the perfect cover, making her the last person they would ever suspect. For Nathan and Astrid, the morning dawned with a deceptive calm. They were taking their usual walk to the farmer's market just 3 blocks from home. Rex trotted faithfully at their side, no leash required. His loyalty was his only tether. Astrid chattered on, lost in the world of her newest book. It was a tale of dragons and brave knights, but Nathan only half heard her his thoughts already on the difficult transmission job waiting back at the shop. A chill in the autumn air carried the first promise of winter, and he made a quiet promise to himself to get Astrid a new coat. Sarah would have already found the perfect one for her. They were just passing the old parking garage on Hancock Street when their peaceful world shattered. The sharp report of gunfire ripped through the morning's peace instantly, followed by terrified screams and the frantic pounding of feet on pavement. Nathan's instincts took over, pulling Astrid behind him as a river of people fled past their faces, etched with pure terror. And through the chaos, he saw her, a police officer, down on the cold asphalt, struggling to crawl for cover as a crimson stain blossomed across her shoulder. Two shadowy figures emerged from the depths of the garage, their weapons raised, moving with lethal intent. The officer's sidearm lay useless just feet from her grasp, her hand pressed desperately against the wound in a futile attempt to stem the bleeding. Years of military training surged to the surface, his mind instantly calculating angles, distance, and threats. But a force more powerful than training held him, Astrid's small hand in his. Her voice, trembling with a child's pure heart, whispered the words that would change the course of his life. "Dad, we have to help her." The plea struck him like a physical blow. His daughter, seeing a life on the line, simply expected her father to be the hero she had always believed him to be. Nathan's chest constricted as the floodgates opened, the searing memories of sand and unrelenting heat, the heavy weight of a rifle in his hands, the faces of comrades who he'd lost to the fight. He had sworn he'd left that world behind. He'd made a solemn vow to never again walk into the line of fire. Astrid needed her father whole and alive. But that officer was dying. He could see it in her weakening movements in the dark pool that continued to spread beneath her. The assailants were repositioning, moving in to finish the job they had started. And all the while, his daughter's eyes were locked on him, waiting to see the true measure of her father. His eyes found the corner store just 20 feet away, where its owner, Margaret Wilson, stared in horror through the glass. In that instant, the choice was made. He scooped Astrid into his arms and sprinted for the store, almost tossing her through the door. "Call 911, he commanded Margaret, his voice steady despite his hammering heart. "Keep her safe, and don't let her watch!" Before Astrid could cry out, before reason could chain him down, Nathan was moving, not away from the sound of weapons fire, but running straight toward it. The short distance to the fallen officer felt like an eternity. Nathan's boots hammered the pavement, but Rex surged ahead of him, the dog's fierce loyalty perfectly in sync with his master's unspoken command. A shot screamed past his ear so close he could feel the ghost of its heat. Another round bit into the concrete, spitting up fragments inches from his leg. But he refused to stop. Couldn't stop. Not when he saw the officer's eyes, brown and utterly desperate, locked on him with a storm of shock and hope. Rex got to her first, planting himself between the officer and the gunman. His deep, resounding bark echoed off the buildings, a primal, menacing sound, the roar of a guardian protecting his own. For one critical second, the gunfire ceased. Be it from shock or the simple need to reload, Nathan didn't know and didn't care. He slid the final few feet on his knees, ignoring the sting of skin ripping through denim, and seized the officer beneath her arms. "I've got you," he breathed, unsure if she heard him above Rex's relentless barking and the renewed crack of gunfire. She was heavier than expected. The vest, the gear, the dead weight of someone losing blood. Nathan's muscles, still trained despite 3 long years of civilian life, screamed in protest as he pulled her back toward the shelter of a truck. A bullet found his upper arm, ripping through fabric and flesh with searing heat. Nathan grunted in pain, but never stopped. He used his own body to shield the officer as they retreated, while Rex weaved back and forth, a fierce, unpredictable blur, keeping the gunman's aim unsteady and distracted. 20 feet, 15, 10, finally the blessed cover of the truck's bulk. Nathan immediately ripped his jacket from his shoulders, pressing it firmly against her shoulder wound. Her eyes were glazing over as shock took hold. "Stay with me," he commanded, his combat first aid training kicking in. "Look at me. What's your name?" "Blake," she whispered. "Amanda Blake." "Okay. Amanda, you're gonna be all right. Help is coming." He could already hear the sirens wailing. His own arm was throbbing, blood seeping through his own shirt. But it would have to wait. Her wound was the only priority now. He kept pressure on the wound, his free hand searching for other injuries. He was professional calm amidst the surrounding chaos. The shooters had already vanished at the first wail of sirens, disappearing into a maze of back alleys they clearly knew well. Rex returned to Nathan's side on guard, but no longer aggressive, his muzzle stained with foam from his protective rage. Security cameras from 3 separate buildings had recorded it all: Nathan's desperate sprint, his body shielding Amanda, and Rex's fearless defense. As the first squad cars screamed onto the street, Nathan believed the worst was finally over. He could not have been more wrong. The responding cops saw a blood-soaked civilian hunched over one of their own. They saw Rex, his hackles still up, teeth bared at any sudden movement. They saw exactly what they were trained to see: a threat, not a hero. With weapons drawn, they commanded Nathan to back away from Amanda, get on the ground, and restrain his dog. "I'm trying to help her," Nathan pleaded, keeping his hands firmly on the compress. "She's lost so much blood." The gunman fled east down that alley. But Sergeant Dante Cross, the shift commander arriving with the second wave, had no interest in hearing Nathan's side of the story. Tall and lean, with perfectly styled blonde hair and cold gray eyes that rarely blinked, Cross looked like a man who pronounced judgment long before asking any questions. His pale skin and sharp features gave him an almost predatory look as he surveyed the entire chaotic scene. "Secure the civilian," Cross commanded. "Get that dog under control, and somebody get Blake to a hospital now." Paramedics finally reached Amanda, their professional efficiency, taking over where Nathan's courage left off. While being lifted onto a gurney, she fought to speak, to tell them Nathan was her hero, but Cross was deaf to her words. His gaze was locked on Nathan, an intense scrutiny that made Nathan's combat instincts blare with alarm. The hours that followed became a chilling blur of procedure and suspicion. Nathan was hauled to the station, his arm given a perfunctory look by an EMT before he was put in an interrogation room. Rex was seized by animal control despite Nathan's desperate pleas, fated for a quarantine facility until his supposed threat could be assessed. And worst of all, Astrid was torn away into protective custody, the trauma of her father's arrest compounding her terror. Margaret Wilson, the shopkeeper who'd sheltered Astrid, desperately tried to recount what she had witnessed, but her words were dismissed, filed away indifferently. A different story was already being written, one that had no room for heroes. In the stark interrogation room, thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation, Nathan faced Cross across a cold metal table, its surface scarred by years of similar confrontations. Cross's interrogation style was pure psychological warfare. He used punishing silences, relentless questions, and accusations veiled as casual observations. Former Marine Cross noted reading from the file. "Combat experience, PTSD diagnosis post-discharge. Lost your wife 3 years ago. That's a heavy burden, Mr. Carter. Sometimes trauma makes people do unexpected things, like save a police officer." Nathan kept his voice perfectly level, recognizing every single one of these interrogation tactics. Like being in the perfect place at the perfect time. "You know what I find fascinating?" Cross leaned back, his expensive watch glinting under the fluorescent lights. "The Iron Vultures knew Officer Blake's exact location. That was a classified surveillance post. So either we have a rat in our house or an outsider got the drop on the entire operation. I was just taking my daughter to the farmer's market. Checked security footage from every Saturday for the last year. Same route, same time." Cross offered a cold smile that never touched his eyes. "Convenient. A routine that places you precisely where you needed to be." 2 younger officers, Liam Morrison and Finn Walsh, watched through the observation glass, both of them in their early 30s. They'd joined the force with ideals about justice that 5 years on the job hadn't completely stamped out. They shared a troubled look as Cross continued his assault. "This doesn't feel right," Liam muttered. He was stocky and sincere, his red hair refusing to obey regulation length. The guy ran towards the gunfire. His dog saved Blake. So why are we treating him like a criminal? Finn, taller and leaner with a runner's build, shook his head. Cross has been off about this whole Iron Vultures investigation. Remember those weapons that went missing from evidence? He shut down all questions about it so fast. Meanwhile, Amanda Blake was waging her own war. She awoke in the hospital to find her department treating her savior as a potential accomplice. Despite the fog of pain medication clouding her thoughts and the doctor's orders to rest, she demanded a computer and immediately began her own relentless investigation. Nathan Carter's file painted a portrait of valor, countless commendations, and a Bronze Star for pulling 3 wounded Marines from the fire in Afghanistan. He hadn't left the military for PTSD, despite Cross's cruel suggestion, but to be by his dying wife's side. His bank statements revealed a man barely getting by, funneling every last cent toward Astrid's college fund. His boss at the garage gave a glowing review, honest, a master mechanic, never missed a day unless Astrid was sick. This man was no criminal, he was a hero being set up to take a fall. Amanda's investigation plunged into darkness as she opened the Iron Vultures file. The gang's expansion coincided exactly with multiple disturbing evidence room discrepancies. Firearms supposedly destroyed, had serial numbers surfacing on guns from recent gang arrests. An inside man was arming them, and that man knew exactly where she had been positioned. Her mind raced to Cross's actions at the scene, how fast he moved to single out Nathan, how he'd brushed off witness accounts. A sickening suspicion took root, making the pain in her shoulder feel like nothing at all. Back at the garage crime scene, techs tore through Nathan's workspace with a suspicious zeal. They hunted for any sign of gang ties, a trace of drugs, anything at all to make Cross's story stick. But what they found instead was a professional-grade bug planted right under Nathan's workbench. Constance Hale from Internal Affairs was there within the hour. At 40, she carried the weary competence of a woman who'd seen too much rot to ever be shocked again. Her dark hair pulled back tight, framed a stone-cold face that betrayed nothing while she inspected the device. "This is one of ours," she murmured to her partner. "The serial number is right in our inventory logs. The real question is who checked it out and what it's doing here." The entire investigation pivoted even as Nathan sat in a cell. Constance's team traced the device's authorization. Cross had signed it out 6 weeks ago for a surveillance operation that existed completely off the books. The ammo that struck Amanda came from a very specific lot, a lot reported stolen from the evidence room, a case Cross himself had investigated and conveniently closed as unsolvable. All the pieces were finally clicking together, forming a portrait of corruption that ran deeper than anyone dared to imagine. After 48 hours of Nathan being held, Amanda defied her doctor's orders, checked herself out of the hospital, and marched into the station. Her left arm was in a sling, her face pale, but a fire of pure resolve burned in her eyes. "I need to see Sergeant Cross," she told the desk officer. "It's about the Nathan Carter case." Cross materialized in minutes, his face a carefully constructed mask. "Officer Blake, you should be in bed. Nathan Carter saved my life and I will testify to it. I'll also testify that my surveillance spot was known to only 3 people in this world. Me, Lieutenant Morrison. And you." A shadow of calculation flickered across Cross's eyes, maybe even a hint of fear. "You're clearly still suffering from trauma, Blake. Maybe you ought to, or maybe I should talk to Internal Affairs about the guns missing from evidence, or how the Iron Vultures are always one step ahead of us, about the bug they found in Nathan Carter's garage." The entire precinct had fallen silent. The precinct held its breath, officers feigning work while hanging on every word. A dark, unnatural flush crept across Cross's face, his carefully built composure beginning to splinter. "Tread lightly, Blake. Words like those can bury careers." "Yes," Constance Hale's voice cut in, appearing as if from the shadows. "They most certainly can." She raised a folder bearing the IAA's damning seal. "Sergeant Cross, I am going to need you to come with me. We have some inquiries regarding your financial records, specifically the $50,000. Ninchi Chutraint was deposited to an offshore account, one that is linked directly to your wife's maiden name. And so began the utter collapse of a corrupt network that had festered for 2 long years. For Cross, it had all started small, turning a blind eye on minor arrests in return for a handful of cash. But Leon Marshall, the Iron Vulture's leader, saw an opportunity. He'd offered Cross a partnership that spiraled from protection money into full-blown active collaboration, which included funneling them weapons and vital intelligence. Amanda was getting dangerously close to the truth. Her surveillance of the gang's weapons cache didn't just threaten the Iron Vultures, it threatened to expose Cross's deep involvement. The attempt on her life was staged to look like a gang incident, with Nathan framed to take the fall as an accomplice, or just tragic collateral damage. Cross had been shadowing Nathan for weeks, memorizing his every move, knowing precisely the right moment to make his strike. But they never counted on Nathan's instincts or Rex's unyielding ferocity. They certainly never foresaw Amanda's will to survive and her determination. The raid against the Iron Vultures launched 3 days later. Nathan, finally cleared of all charges, had volunteered to assist. His expertise in urban combat and Rex's tracking abilities were proving to be invaluable. The strike focused on a sprawling warehouse complex by the harbor, where intel pinpointed the gang's stash of weapons and cash. Rain hammered down on the metal roofs as the tactical teams crept into their final positions. Nathan, wearing a borrowed tactical vest, guided Constance's team through the labyrinth of containers. Rex, at last freed from quarantine, moved with Liam to clear any potential ambush points. The dog's senses were far sharper than any technology, alerting them to hidden gang members before thermal imaging could even register their heat. And Cross was there too, having arranged a meeting with Leon to warn him of the raid, a final act of betrayal that Constance had already anticipated. He was wearing a wire. Cross became the star witness against his own case as he laid out the entire conspiracy to a listening lion, warning him to move the entire arsenal before dawn. Then floodlights ignited the darkness, and sirens screamed. Chaos erupted. Leon's men scattered, but Rex had already sniffed out their escape paths. His powerful barks guided teams toward fleeing suspects, while Nathan's tactical mind helped coordinate the encirclement. And when it was over, 17 gang members were apprehended with an arsenal large enough to arm a small militia. Cross's face, as Constance arrested him personally, was a mask of disbelief melting into resignation. The long and bloody game was over, and every single soul there knew it. The trial that followed became a public sensation. Evidence from Cross's communications, his financial records, and the wiretap recording created an unbreakable case. Prosecutor Evelyn Torres, a woman known for her unrelenting tenacity, methodically showed how a sworn officer had betrayed his sacred oath for greed, endangering both officers and civilians. Amanda testified about her own investigation. Her voice was steady, describing the assault, and Nathan's bravery as video evidence played on the screens, displaying Nathan's desperate run through Gunfire and Rex's valiant stand, and the frantic first aid that ultimately saved her. When Nathan took the stand, a hush fell over the room. He spoke plainly about that fateful morning, just taking his daughter to market, seeing a life in peril, making a call. When asked why he risked it all for a complete stranger, his answer echoed far beyond the courtroom walls. My daughter was watching. She had to see that when someone needs help, you don't weigh the cost, you just act. That's the heart of our humanity. Cross was given 25 years for his corruption, attempted murder, and weapons dealing. Leon Marshall got life without parole. 17 other conspirators were handed down varying sentences. The case sparked a sweeping reform of the Boston Police Department's evidence protocols and internal affairs. The mayor awarded Nathan the city's Citizens Medal of Valor, though he looked out of place in his borrowed suit as the camera flashes ignited. What mattered most was Astrid in the front row, beaming with pride. Rex sat perfectly still at her side, unmoved by the crowd. The city had discovered its unlikely hero in a grieving mechanic whose only wish was to raise his daughter in peace. Business at the garage where Nathan worked tripled as grateful citizens brought their cars to the man who had renewed their faith in ordinary courage. Nathan brought on 2 new assistants to manage the overflow, creating jobs in a community that was starving for them. He also started offering free self-defense and first aid courses down at the local community center. These were skills he was adamant everyone should possess. Rex became a certified therapy dog, with Astrid as his junior handler. Together they visited hospitals and local schools. Rex's serene presence and Astrid's bright spirit bringing solace to all those in need. The little girl who lost her mother found new purpose helping others heal, and Amanda became a welcome fixture in the Carters' home. First, she came simply to thank Nathan, then to see how he was healing. But soon, it was simply because she enjoyed their company teaching Astrid chess and card games that honed her strategic mind. She helped Nathan through the complex red tape of victim compensation claims. Slowly, without either of them ever planning it, she became a natural part of their lives. There was a profound healing in the experiences they shared. Amanda understood that loss, having lost her partner in a shooting 5 years earlier, and Nathan understood the crushing weight of survival, the guilt of being the one left standing. And so together, they began to find a balance, each mending pieces the other didn't know were broken. 6 months later, an autumn sunset painted Boston Common in gold. Astrid ran on ahead with Rex, the 2 of them chasing fallen leaves, as evening joggers smiled at their pure joy. Nathan and Amanda followed at a slower pace, wrapped in a comfortable silence that had taken the place of needing to fill the air with words. "I never truly thanked you," Amanda said softly, her healed arm brushing gently against his. "Not just for saving my life, for believing in justice when the system failed, for showing Astrid what integrity means." Nathan looked over at her, noticing how the dying sun ignited the amber flecks in her eyes. "You fought for me when everyone else assumed the worst. That's more than enough thanks." "No," Amanda insisted, bringing their walk to a halt. "It isn't." She turned her gaze, meeting his, her expression earnest yet tender. "Nathan, when I first came here all those months ago, I wanted to thank a hero. But I stayed because I found a home. You, Astrid, even Rex. You've all given me something I never knew my heart was missing." Nathan's hand found its way to hers, his calloused fingers lacing through her delicate ones. That single touch said everything, but still he spoke the words. "Sarah would have loved you. She always said I needed someone to challenge me, to keep me true, someone who could love Astrid as much as she did." "And do I?" Amanda asked, though the answer was already known to them both. Astrid had gone from calling her Aunt Mandy to just Mandy, and lately sometimes ever so carefully. "Mom." "You know you do," Nathan affirmed, drawing her into his arms. All around them Boston hummed with its evening rhythm, but in their small, sacred circle, time itself seemed to stand still. Astrid, seeing them, ran back with Rex right at her heels. She saw their joined hands, the space between them filled with a quiet warmth, and a smile erupted on her face bright enough to power the entire city. "Are you guys finally getting married?" she asked with pure 8-year-old directness. "Wahoo!" "Because Rex and I have been waiting for like ever." Amanda's laughter rang out a brilliant sound against the crisp autumn air as Nathan shook his head, a smile touching his lips. "We should probably go on a date first, kiddo." "Dating is for strangers," Astrid declared with certainty. "You two already know everything. Mandy knows you use way too much sugar and leave your socks all over the place. You know she sings in the shower and can't cook anything but eggs. And Rex knows she sneaks him treats when your back is turned. What else is there to know?" As if in agreement, Rex barked once, his tail thumping with joy as he looked between the 3 people who were his pack. The brave German shepherd who had once faced down a hail of bullets now understood the truest victory wasn't stopping violence, but building a family. Amanda knelt down to Astrid's eye level, her voice soft but serious. "How would you really feel if your dad and I, if we became a true family?" Astrid launched herself into Amanda's arms, hugging her so tightly she nearly tipped over. "I already picked out my wedding dress. It's blue just like Mom's was. Dad showed me pictures. She'd want him to be happy again. She would want me to have someone who reads me stories and teaches me chess and makes Dad smile for real again. Nathan then joined their embrace, his powerful arms wrapping around them both, while Rex nudged against their legs, making their circle complete. In that very moment, on a simple path in the heart of Boston Common, a new family was truly forged. Not born from tradition, but one forged in the fires of crisis, tested by injustice, and made unbreakable by choice. The sun sank low behind the skyline, bathing the city in breathtaking hues of amber and rose. They walked home as one, with Astrid held safely between Nathan and Amanda, their hands clasped above her head as she joyfully swung between them. Rex trotted on ahead, ever watchful, but at complete ease, knowing his pack was finally safe. The garage, the badge, the echoes of violence and loss. None of it vanished, but it was transformed, becoming a foundation instead of a crushing weight. Nathan still worked on cars, but now he also guided fellow veterans back to civilian life. Amanda still wore her uniform, but now with a restored faith in the very justice it stood for. The ache for her mother remained, yet Astrid now understood that love doesn't replace it, expands. 3 months passed, then came a crisp winter morning, a fine powder of snow gracing the courthouse steps. There, Nathan Carter and Amanda Blake pledged their lives in an intimate ceremony, with Astrid as maid of honor, and Rex, the loyal ring bearer, the precious band secured to his collar. Liam and Finn stood as groomsmen, while Constance and Margaret watched on part of the close circle of witnesses. The very judge who had presided over Cross's trial officiated, a knowing smile on her face as she declared them husband and wife. From the chaos, courage. From the injustice, truth. From the loss, love reborn. She said, "May your union be as strong as the character you have both shown." And as they kissed, both Astrid and Rex cried out, one in laughter, the other in pure joy. The camera clicked, capturing an image destined for their living room wall. A father who had charged headfirst into danger. A mother who battled for the truth. A daughter whose faith never wavered. And the dog who had shielded them all. Behind them, framed by the courthouse windows, Boston lay bathed in winter sunlight. A city where a single act of courage had sent ripples of hope outward, touching lives and restoring faith in ways no one could have ever foreseen. The mechanic who only wanted peace had found his calling. The cop who fought alone had found a partner. The girl who lost a mother found her family grow. And the German shepherd who raced into gunfire had finally found his pack, complete and safe from harm. Some heroes wear capes, others wear the honor of a badge or a uniform. But sometimes they wear oil-stained coveralls and just want to take their daughter to the farmer's market. Nathan Carter was all of these things and none of them. He was simply a man who chose courage when it mattered most, discovering that the greatest rescue isn't saving someone from danger, but building a life worth protecting from the ashes. As the small wedding party scattered into the winter morning, Astrid tugged on Nathan's hand. "Dad, does that mean Rex gets another medal for being the absolute best ring bearer?" Nathan laughed, sweeping her up into his arms despite her laughing protests that she was too big for such things. "I think Rex has earned all the medals he's ever going to need. He has his family. That's worth more than all the awards in the world." Amanda leaned into Nathan's shoulder, her new ring catching the winter light. "Speaking of our family, there is something we really need to tell you, Astrid." The little girl's eyes instantly widened with hope. Are we going to have a baby?" "Not yet." Amanda said, her smile warm at the fleeting disappointment on Astrid's face. "But we've begun the adoption process for a wonderful little boy named Marcus. He's 6, and he lost his parents last year. He needs a family. And we thought, I'm going to be a big sister." Astrid's shriek of pure joy sent pigeons scattering from the courthouse steps. Rex barked right along his tail, wagging furiously. "When can I meet him? Does he like dogs?" "Autranu. Will he share my room?" As the newly formed Carter Blake family walked toward their car, discussing bedroom layouts, favorite colors, and whether Marcus might like comic books, the city around them hummed with life. But for all those who had witnessed their journey, the officers who now dared to question wrong orders, the citizens who saw ordinary courage conquer corruption, and the children who watched a family rise again from the depths of tragedy, Boston felt a flickers of safety, a glimmer of hope, all because Nathan Carter ran toward the flames. He wasn't a soldier or a hero, just a father, a man who refused to turn his back on a life in peril. And with that one devastating choice, he taught an entire city that courage isn't a world without fear, but action in the face of it. That justice is not a professional duty, but a personal calling. And that true love isn't extinguished by loss, but instead grows stronger, making room for new hearts. A love willing to risk everything for another. The legend of the single dad who ran to the fire would be told in precincts and city halls, in bedtime stories, and on the nightly news. But for Nathan, Amanda, Astrid, and Rex, it was simply the start of their own story. A family forged in fire, bonded by choice, and protected by a loyalty that no power on ever threatened.